Hi everyone. This is a VR uh, to Tarot Yogi. I'm gonna say that probably my strongest clair, or the most prominent clair, would is in clairaudience, clairvoyance, claircognizance, or clairsentience, is going to be clairsentience. So I would say that probably most people would classify me as an empath, and that I'm very, very sensitive. Um, And in talking about this, Tarot Yogi mentioned the number of people that talk about clairaudience and clairvoyance and any of the other clair facilities as though they're an authority on the matter, on the subject, including Doreen Virtue, and about how it felt like she was perhaps seeming as though she had everything pulled together because of marketing, and because when who you are is based on, and your identity is based on your sensitivity, it's easy to avoid seeing it realistically. So the revelation that people have had about her just being a human being has probably been pretty shattering, because she came across as a real authority on the matter. My own experience of being sensitive, and I would say that extends beyond just the clairsentience, second into claircognizance or clairvoyance, but I'm just generally a very highly visual person. I do also have synesthesia, so when I hear things, my brain wants to translate them into something visual. So my visual cortex is active when I read, or when I listen to words, when I listen to sound, when I listen to music. It's all being translated instantly into something that's visual, which is weird. And it means that my brain's occupied a lot of the time translating information into something I can see. So that extends into really vivid dreaming, lucid vivid dreaming, and so on and so forth. Like a lot of people who are empathic and sensitive, I spent a lot of my early life being accused of being sensitive in a way that was really harmful and hurtful, and in a way that was used against me. That was pretty painful. As I've gotten older and more mature, I have learned that those are not the people to have in my life. And I've also, through a very lengthy process, begun to understand that a lot of the conflict between someone calling me sensitive and accusing me of, being oversensitive, usually it's you're oversensitive, is more a commentary on what's coming up for them that I bring up in them, and vice versa. So I'll go into more detail about what I mean by that. When somebody is really sensitive, and they're sensitive in the sense that everything gets to them, it's like they have a thin skin, which I definitely have, or like they're going to be easily hurt or easily wounded by something, it tends to annoy people. I'm not sure I've completely figured that one out, but there's a dynamic in it that I feel like I have started to figure out. And that is that when it comes up for me in the form of being irritated by someone else's sensitivity, so in other words, flipping it and recognizing the moments where I'm on the other side of it, I usually find that there's something in myself that I need to work on. There's some unmet need, or some anger, or shame, or guilt, or just unfinished business that's being brought to the surface. So the fact that I'm sensitive to that person is and that natural sensitivity that I have is what brings that up and brings it to the surface in the first place in me. And it works the other side. When I'm sensitive in the eyes or the viewpoint of someone else who thinks that I'm too sensitive, generally speaking, there's something in me that is triggering them. It's unresolved in them as an unmet need, as who knows? Who knows what it is? It could be anything, but it's something that's hard for them. It's difficult for them. It's something that's in their shadow. The more deeply they've worked to push it back or push it away, the more irritation will usually accompany it. It's a toxic combination, and it usually means I need to get away from it. The mistake I used to make was in thinking that it was my fault, or that there was something wrong with me, or something that I'd done wrong. And after years and years of work on myself and a lot of therapy, I've recognized that that's not the case. That it's just that I'm very, very sensitive. Another part of it that makes it difficult to be an empath is the notion that what you're experiencing isn't really coming from you, it's coming from someone else, right? So the fact that I'm getting ready to teach this theater movement class and all of the students in here are putting out all kinds of stuff and I'm feeling all kinds of stuff because of that is actually more a commentary on what I need to work on for myself in terms of skill sets than it is a commentary on the students. When people, when you're in a crowd or in a party, everyone there has their own stuff. They just do. If you're sensitive, yeah, you're going to pick up on that stuff. The difference for me has been about whether or not it's stuff that resonates with me or stuff that doesn't resonate with me anymore. If it's something that resonates with me because it's something that is painful or triggering on any level, it could be a very simple trigger, it could be a very big trigger, I'm going to be more likely to experience it as a distraction or a problem. Unless I've dealt with it, in which case I can see it, and then I will have something more like empathy or compassion for the person experiencing that, but I won't feel a need to do anything about it. And for me, that has been a really big difference. The difference between needing to do something about what's coming up for someone else, because it's also coming up in me, versus being able to leave it alone and simply recognize it and have space for it. That's been pretty huge. I was in a really abusive relationship several years ago. It's been quite a long time ago now. And that was something that my ex used against me, the sensitivity, and also the fact that I told him that sometimes I would see things or that I would hear things or know things. That was really upsetting for him. It was also something that gave him permission to question my sanity, which is often a dynamic in a toxic relationship. And so I did something that I have never regretted in the time since, which is to see mental health specialists. And while it couldn't fix my ex or his issues, something it could do for me was put me in a space where someone could listen and say, yep, I think those things are real. That's great. I'm glad that you have intuition and that you're an empath and you may have some psychic ability and so forth. But what I'm really more interested in is how are you affected by it? What does it do to you on a day-to-day basis? How do you manage it? And then for her to say, okay, so what tools do you have in your toolbox? So I could say to her, well, I meditate. I do yoga. I learned to do Reiki. I gave her this whole laundry list of tools that I'd learned, but never really figured out how to apply in terms of managing my own homeostasis, my own sense of balance in myself. From my perspective, I really struggled with, if I walked into a classroom and there was a lot going on with a particular group of students, or if there was a lot going on with one particular student for whom that interaction could be very triggering. The tendency could be for me to say, their energy is so much that I can't cope with it, right? And my therapist helped me to look at that situation a little differently and be able to say, okay, well, you can't fix what's wrong with student X or with group of students over there. You can really only manage your own reaction to it. So in other words, what I had to really work hard on was boundaries. And having psychic boundaries isn't just about imagining something around your aura that contains you and holds everybody else outside of it and so on and so forth. It's also recognizing, look, whatever it is that you're seeing in another person, whatever else they're bringing up in you, the only thing that you can really do about it or do for it is to manage your own response to it. That's it. And take full responsibility for that process. And that's really hard work. It's really, really hard work. And it's worth every minute, every ounce of energy I've ever put into anything, because it's made my life that much easier, and it's allowed me to become that much more skillful in interpersonal interactions. It has helped me to stop making potential assumptions about someone or something, which of course they're all in your own mind, right? It may be that you are picking up on something that's in them, but we usually don't stop at that point. We usually take it beyond that into making assumptions. So in other words, we bring in our own cognitive distortions, which could be black or white thinking, magical thinking, mind reading. Think about that in terms of its relationship to developing intuition, right? There's boundary issues. So learning, whatever's going on with these people and this stuff, it has to be okay for them to be where they are. And I don't necessarily have to react to it. If I am reacting to it and I'm doing so in such a way, that managing myself has become a full-time, non-negotiable, I can hardly do it situation, then I need to act with self-compassion and get out, right? I need to get away from that person, away from that situation, or even say, look, this is not, folks, I'm really sorry. I'm not in a good place to be in the classroom with you today. I didn't realize that until I came in here. I really thought I was okay to teach. It's nothing that anyone said or did. I'm just not in a good place at this moment, or I'm not feeling well at this moment, and I've really got to go and take care of myself. I really ask your forgiveness and your understanding, but this is just how it is. And I have actually had to do that a couple of times. Not for quite a long time, but it has happened. On that journey, learning to do that and set those boundaries that way for myself, and then go take care of whatever it is that's coming up, has been necessary. And it's okay. I think it's a safer way of dealing. It stops the enmeshment and the entanglement, that would happen with other people, and gave me the ability to just take responsibility for what was mine without having to change, fix, or blame or judge someone else. And that was really hard. The other aspects of it that include things like managing reactions to different psychic experiences and how those have affected me. Again, having a therapist there to just talk about that, the impact of it, has been tremendous. The downside, and there's always a downside, if you're really honest, there's usually something that's less than perfect, is that it's meant I haven't really been able to find very many people, I guess as teachers or people that could really help develop those abilities or those skills further, because they're often people who are spiritually bypassing. So whether it's a teacher that's an energy worker, or a Buddhist meditation teacher, or really any kind of spiritual teacher, finding one who could just be fully human, but also working towards being a fully integrated human who has a dark side and a shadow side and has their own issues and problems. That's been really, really challenging. And so because of that, I really found that I'm content to leave the intuition and the development of psychic abilities and stuff to one side in favor of just leading a better life and in favor of just working with what's here right now. And so in part, learning to work with what's here right now means to take in whatever it is, whatever impressions are coming through, whether they're clairaudient, and they're rarely clairaudient anymore, thankfully. Whether they're clairvoyant, clairsentient, or claircognizant, filter it, make sure that it's not just some, other, extraneous detail coming in from the environment that I can't filter. I do feel strongly that with those sensitivities and abilities, there's a certain amount of like attention deficit stuff that goes on, and learning to really rein the mind in and concentrate it helps to filter that information better. It also helps to increase your ability to look objectively at what's happening. And that too then helps you nail down, okay, then is it, are these physical cues and behavioral cues that I'm getting from the people around me that I can actually objectively name and pinpoint? Or is it subjective and I can't quite pinpoint it? Or is it something else entirely? Or is it something that my body's giving me, that anytime I'm near this person, this physical reaction starts to happen in my own body? Whatever it is, the key I've found that's been the most, by far and away the most helpful in terms of, I guess, even like honing some of that psychic ability to a degree, has been in learning how to be objective. It grounds you in reality right now, right here, right now, and it stops all the other facilities of the mind from taking over and just kind of forming this. I feel like this is probably pretty universal, but it could be just me. I don't know. But I would get this like haze of so much going on, so many feelings, so many emotions, so much stuff. It's coming from over there. It's that person, or it's this room, or it's this whatever. If I can stop reacting for just long enough to realize that I'm reacting to something, breathe, feel my feet, and just come back to my own body and what my body is telling me, long enough to feel that my heart rate and breath are slowing and calming themselves, then I can begin to pinpoint stuff. So then I can begin to tell you, is it this person's body language? And if so, what are the specific things that they're doing? Is it their tone of voice? Is it, you can see like there's a whole can of worms you can open up. Doing that will give you tremendous grounding, sanity, belief in yourself, belief in what you're doing. It's life-changing work. It's life-changing work. And I would say that between learning to meditate and work with a psychotherapist to manage all of the other stuff that's not the sensitivity itself, but really like the way it affects your life, is what really makes the biggest difference. Because I think a lot of people who are empaths and who are clairsentient are people who have probably had, including myself, who have probably had a really challenging set of experiences in childhood, whereby the cultivation of those sensitivities became something that served survival. Because in some way it helps you understand what other people are needing, right? But in understanding and recognizing the needs of others, as kids, we can believe, if I can recognize and see what my mom needs, maybe if I meet those needs, she might love me more, or give me what I need. Well, maybe she will, maybe she won't. And it isn't something that necessarily means that your mom is a narcissist or that she's bad. But maybe it just meant that that's how you understood things as a kid. Not that there's nothing wrong with it. It's just what it is. It's just what it is. But it didn't necessarily do anything to get your own needs met, or at least not consistently. People are flattered when you understand them and feel them. They feel seen, they feel understood, it feels good to them. But we often do that really at the expense of meeting our own needs. So something that's really hard to admit, that's really painful actually, was recognizing like, wow, a lot of the time when I'm really over empathetic or over sensitive or overreacting, to sensitivity, it's got something to do with having a lot of unmet needs of my own. And part of maturity is being able to recognize that you have needs, to be okay with the fact that you have needs, and then to go out and seek the meeting of those needs on your own as an adult. Because the vast majority, say 3/4 of the needs that you have, are needs that you can probably meet on your own if you really look at it. Doesn't mean that you don't need other people, because we all need other people. We all do. It just means that maybe a lot of the things that we want other people to do for us are things that it's not reasonable to ask for others to do. And just because we're able to see that what other people's needs are, doesn't mean that we should be meeting those needs for others. Maybe it's an invasion of their boundaries. Maybe it's something that would stop them from building their own strength, building their own resilience, their own ability to become realized in themselves. In other words, it is possible to overhelp other people. It is possible to do too much for other people, to the detriment of yourself and to their detriment, which is a shocking notion for a lot of people. It was for me. I really thought it would make me a better person, but it doesn't. The only thing that really made me a better person was in recognizing my own weakness, my own fallibility, my own lack of something, my own unmet needs. And by willingly recognizing those and then seeking ways to meet my own needs, more and more space opened up. And now when the majority of the time, it's not always 100%, and sometimes it's really even very difficult even now. But for the majority of the time, when I come up against someone else's pain, someone else's challenge, someone else's difficulty, whether it has any resonance with one of my own previous challenges or not, or present challenges or not, more often than not, what comes up is a sense of genuine tenderness and compassion. And that is a place of empathy and wisdom, I guess, in the use of the clairsentience that is irreplaceable. I wouldn't trade that for the world, because it changes every interaction I have with other people. And it leaves me with a lot more space to be present with them, to really hear them from their own perspective, rather than from a perspective that I might have been subjectively placing on them. I hope that makes sense. This is way longer than I intended, once again, but yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot to say on the matter. I think that there are a lot of things that are natural functions of the brain, that are natural functions of being human, that are also related to being clairvoyant or clairsentient, and or clairaudient, these abilities that are very closely related to sensitivities and abilities we already have. It's just that we don't know why or how that particular information gets in here, where we might more easily be able to see where it's coming from if it were not, a clair. So, yeah. Anyway, there's a lot to talk about here. There's a lot to talk about here. And I definitely don't have all the answers, but I feel like I've chipped away in my own life at being able to manage those abilities in a way that they don't cause me to suffer so much anymore. Either their lack, the lack of being clairaudient for a little while, or the lack of being accurate or something with those abilities, it doesn't feel like a fault. There's probably just something interrupting my nervous system that, that's there that I'm not paying attention to, and it's okay. It's really okay. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that that's what's going on. And not having a judgment around it makes it easier. So I hope that that's helpful. And I'm really excited to see what other things people have to say on the matter. I guess my biggest point would be just that I wish all of us could just be more honest about the shadow stuff that's behind those sensitivities, rather than just glorifying them as like gifts. Because it's possible that they could be gifts. I would say in some respects they are gifts. But I think too that really turning them from, a sensitivity into a blessing has to do with really, really hard work on the self and on your individual stuff that comes along with being sensitive in the first place. So thank you. I appreciate your watching up to this point if you have. And I'm just look forward to more dialogue on it.